Beginning the current Daf, Mesechta Chagigah Daf begins 6 lines down at the top of the Amud, where we continue the discussion from the previous Daf. We had opened up this Perik Shlishi, claim of a Kodesh. We spoke about 10/11 different stringencies that Kachim has over Truma, and the first one was regarding being toivel a kli b'teich kli, and we had two different interpretations in that halacha. The Gemara discusses what is the chilik between those two different interpretations. The shares corresponds because of the Cheskol Tainim Daf Chaim. Pishon is joining us for today's daf. Some of the things we discuss in today's daf are, like we said, kelim b'teich kelim, whether one can immerse a utensil inside a larger utensil. The Gemara discusses specifically a case of salvagar gusni, shemilim kelim v'tvilan, regarding that if you have very large vessels, if that would be a problem for this halacha of kli b'teich kli or not. Additionally, regarding kli tamei, whether you could do a kli b'teich kli if the outer kli is not tahar itself, but actually tamei also. Eva, we're leaning regarding certain halachas because we don't want to incite hatred from an amaretz. She'ela, when is it permitted to borrow a utensil from an amaretz? Neman amaretz, whether an amaretz is believed to say that he immersed either himself or his utensils. Acharai metoich, the outside and the inside of a utensil can be considered as separate utensils for halachas of tumah, and each one can become its own tumah dirabanan, while the other parts remain tameh. So begin the current Daf Yomi, 6 lines down from the top of the Amud. Like we said, there was two different interpretations in the opening halacha of the 10-11 milas that Kachim has over the stringencies over that of Truma. First one was that you cannot be toivel a kli b'teich kli. You can't immerse one vessel inside of another vessel. First interpretation of Rabbi Ila was because of chatzitza, because it's going to weigh down, and the water is not going to get between the inner and the outer one. Rava said it's not because of chatzitza. He said it's because of halachas of mikvah, which is that we're concerned that if we can let you toivel clean another kli, you might take like a small little bottle, and you're going to put in your needles over there, and you're going to be immersing in the mikvah. The problem is that's not mikvah water. That's actually the soda bottle water, because it's not kishvei hanoid. It's not like the width of 2 fingers going around, and that wouldn't be considered as if it's part of the mikvah water. So that's why Gemara continues. Now, halachically, what is the difference between their interpretations? Who cares if it's because of chatzitza or because of concern of that you're not going to have such a wide opening? Either way, you can't do it. What's the difference for the reasoning? The Traces says, what do you mean? There's many differences, and he gives one example. He says regarding the outer vessel. If you're doing a kli b'teich kli, according to the one that says that it's chatzitza, that would be both for the inner and the outer one, because if it's weighing down, you're not doing good tefillah on the outer one too. But according to the one that says the concern is only because we're concerned that the outer one's not going to have kishraferes anoid, that's only exerted for the inner vessel, not for the outer vessel. Because the outer vessel, as we're going to see later on in the Gemara, that's a good tefillah no matter how small the hole is. It's just regarding the inner one. So what's the Gemara saying that my ikka, to Rabbi Chanan, Taisus brings from Rabbi Chanan, says that the case that we're discussing in our Mishnah, specifically when the outer one is tar and the inner one is tamei, and therefore it's not related to the idea about kvedesh al kli legabe the chitz. And you're right, we're only discussing regarding the inner one, because we're not toiveling the outer one. The outer one is tahar, and the lashon kli b'teich kli also sounds like that, because if you were toiveling both, you would say they're not going to be toivel kelim. Kli b'teich kli sounds like it's the word of you're toiveling really only the inner one, in the outer one. So that's what the Gemara is asking. What's the difference between these two different interpretations? Says the Gemara, the difference between them is sal v'gargusni. Basically large baskets. Sal is a basket, and gargusni is a very large basket. Which that basket they used to use to sift the wine at the time of the harvest. They would put that basket beneath the flow of the wine press. And the wine would flow through this basket, and that would go into the cistern, to the pit, like the Gemara says, so if you take such large baskets, shemilan, kelim, bitvilan, and you fill up, like you go to the mikveh, into the kelim mikveh, and you get these big large baskets, and you put in your forks, and you put in all your stuff, because you don't want to lose it there, that ominous bottom of the mikveh, and you title it like that. That's giving the nafkamina between these two different interpretations. The Gemara explains. According to Rabbi Ila, that he says the problem at kli b'teich kli for kachim, you could do this by truma, and we could do this when we table things too. But according to Rabbi Ila, it says that's the problem because of kachim is chatzitza seikah. There's still a concern that when you have all those plates, all those things that are weighing down in that basket, maybe it's not going to touch the bottom of the vessel because it's touching the basket, and that would still be a concern. But But according to Rav, it says our concern is you might table needles and small little forks. B'kli in the vessel she'im b'fim is annoyed like that the opening might be not like the size of the tube of the flask. It might be too small. Well, sabrika gusni she'im b'fim k'shafed is annoyed. There you don't have just the k'shafed is annoyed. Lekker, you wouldn't have such a concern. Meaning, a regular vessel, you could say, okay, maybe this one has a smaller one, this is a bigger one. We're not going to let you because you might come to use it, it's not so big. But a sabrika gusni is not even in the category of something not having the right opening because it's a huge open basket. So there we wouldn't have like a loy plug. We would say that's not applicable at all, such a concern. And therefore that would be such a case, there'd be a nafka. I mean, according to Rava, you'd be allowed to table the needles, the needle, whatever it is inside this huge open basket. Because there's no problem over there, of course it's part of the mikvah water. Whereas according to Rabbi Ila, that is a problem with chatzitza, you would still have it even in the huge large basket. And the other Rava Tameh. Rava goes according to his reasoning, as we just showed that according to Rava you'd be permitted. But Rava actually says this. It says salva gagusni, a basket in these large baskets, shemilan kelim betvilim. If you fill up a bunch of kelim and you put this into the mikvah that way, so how you don't think mitar even for kachim? Because Rava goes according to his reasoning that he explained the whole reason why you can't do kli b'terkli by kachim is because you might use a vessel that has a very small opening and a small little soda bottle, that 1 liter one that doesn't have that wide opening. And by salva gagusni, there's no such a concern. There's not like we're making up this because there has to be some element that's similar we might have, and you don't have that, and then it's going to be okay. Now the second half of Rava's halacha, just because it's also mentioning salva gagusni, is a mikveh shecholku b'salva gagusni. If you have a mikveh that was divided, made of like a mechitza with baskets, if someone tables on one side, it's not going to be a valid tefillah because essentially he made it into like 2 different mikvahs. And if you don't have a measurement, not on either side, even though the water is being connected in the holes of the baskets, which are small holes, that's not considered as connected, meaning it must mean that these holes are obviously smaller than sheferes hanoich. But no matter what it is, if he's making this mechitza, it's not going to be a valid mikvah because the other kula, because the whole ground, chalchula mechalchala, meaning in the earth, there's water that flows over here that comes from, meaning in a certain area, that comes from a large river. We don't consider it as all connected. And be'inan de'ika mem saba makam echad, you need to have 40 saw in one place, even though technically there's holes in the ground, and that's how you get water from other bodies of underground reservoirs. We don't say, oh, it's connected because there's holes, even though it's coming somewhere. It has to be really in one place, and therefore, if you go and you separate it with these baskets, it's going to be a separate mikvah. Again, that's just the second half of Rav's halacha. The primary thing the Gemara wanted was the first half of his halacha, to show that if you toivel in the mikvah like that, that won't be a problem because there's no concern of sheferes hanoid. But if you separate through the baskets from one side to the other side, that's, even though the water technically is connected, but that wouldn't be considered as a chibur, wouldn't be considered as having in one place 40 sa, and therefore that wouldn't work. Now the Gemara qualifies what we mentioned before. The Hanimili, when did we say this that we said, that if someone tovels a vessel in a vessel, that the opening is not the size of the tube of a flask, it's going to be tameh, meaning everyone agrees to that halacha. The only shaila is that the reason why you can't tovel in any kli b'terkli regarding kachim. But this halacha is specifically b'kli tahar, meaning that the outer vessel that you're toveling it in, that basket, did not need tzvila, and it's tahar. So that's what we said, that okay, if the opening of that bottle is, let's say, too narrow, then what's inside is not going to be being tabled in the mikveh, it's being tabled in the bottle. Abakli tameh, but if let's say the outer vessel itself is tameh and you need to table it too, and you're thinking, hey, this bottle I have to table, and also I have these needles I have to table also, that I don't want to get lost in the mikveh, so I'll put it in the basket. I'll put it in this bottle. Then migui, this salko tvila kule gufa de manas, then what's called migui, a principle of that sense, that the tvila is helping for that whole bottle, that you're purifying it through the water that's coming in through its narrow mouth, because the way it becomes tameh is the way it becomes tar, even though it's very narrow, but that's the whole bottle as it is, and that's how you would table it. So soklu nami, so then the tefillah is going to be effective also the kelim, the ispe, also the vessel that's inside of it. So interesting, although we had said that it's not going to be like connected to the mikvah waters, That's only if the outer kli is tahar and you're not doing a tefillah on it, then the inner one's not going to work. But if you're titling it, then that's obviously considered the mikvah waters because you're purifying the outer vessel. And then therefore, by default, we're going to consider the vessels inside, those small little needles, as actually part of the mikvah too. As the Gemara says, that now, we learned this idea in the Mishnah, which we have a similar Mishnah in mikvahs, slightly different wording. But the Mishnah said, Kalim shemilin kalim et vilam. If you take vessels and you fill it up with vessels, and you table it, hadelu tayr. So they're going to be tahar for truma. And the Mishnah doesn't differentiate between if it's the mouth of the vessel is wide, or if it's a narrow mouth. Now, the imlay taval, which we're going to shortly explain what this means. It's not like if you didn't table, it means if you don't need to table the outer vessel. Then the mayim hamudavim, the water that's of the outer vessel that's mixed with the mikvah, and you're coming to purify through them, through those waters, the vessels that are inside, it's ad shiur mudavim. It's until that it's mixed together, meaning with a very wide opening, kishvefedes hanoy, like that of the tube of a flask. Which the Gemara explains what we just said, because the words don't sound like that. But the Gemara says, what do you mean when you said the imlay tavel? What does it mean if you didn't table it? The words don't really read so well. And if you didn't table the mixed water until it's mixed, like the tube of a flask. So the Gemara says, Chagigah, as we explained this already. If you don't have to table the outer vessel, meaning we said that if you do a kli, and you fill it up with clay kalim, it's going to be tar. That the Mishnah is saying. But if you don't have to table it, rather it's only through a mayim hamuravim. It's only because we want to use the mixed waters, the waters inside this kli, to work for the waters in the mikvah, that it should be mixed with the water in this outer vessel. That's a shiur mudavim. That's until it's going to mix together the waters like the opening of the tube of a flask. That's how wide, which we said is the distance that you could turn all the way around your two fingers. That is the requirement. So we see that there's such a chiluk in this halacha that just that we say you cannot do a kli b'tei kli, meaning in kachim we said you can never do a kli b'tei kli, even if the mouth is wider than that. Truma you could, but even by truma, if you want to title something, obviously the opening has to be that wide. We don't make a gzera of any kli b'tei kli. I'm saying by truma, the Mishnah was telling us that if you're titling the outer vessel, it doesn't have to be kishvefedes hanay. It only has to be kishvefedes hanay. If you're not titling the outer one, because it's tar, then for it to consider the waters mixed, it has to be kishvefedes hanay. Now, the Gemara goes back to say, these two different interpretations are tanai. It's a machlekes tanai. It's kind of like learning the brayso. And because we said, what's the case that's a nafkim in between Rabbi and we said it's regarding salvig agusni. So he said that's machlekes tanaim, the Tanya. The Brayso says salvig agusni shemilin kelim etfilim. Exactly the case that we say would be a nafkim between the two of them. If you fill up a large basket with vessels in your tablet, so it says the Tana Kama, bein l'kodesh, bein l'truma is going to be tahir. So that's like Rava, who he said that's going to work. Because even though the first chayma b'kodesh we said in our Mishnah was that by kachim you cannot do kli b'tei kli, we said that's a regular kli, but a huge basket, there's no such a concern that the opening is not going to be kishvefedes hanay. It's a wide open basket. Now Rabbi Shloimy, which this is like Rabbi Ila, he says no, the truma, only the truma is going to work. But even a huge large basket is not going to work for kachim. So that of Rabbi Ila had explained the reason is because of chatzitza. So Salvig Agusni is just like all of the vessels, because again, whatever you're tabling, these heavy plates inside that basket, it still might be a chatzitza. It's not going to be tar for kachim. Rava, he explained the reason the Mishnah was because we need to have the waters and mixing together. So by Salvig Agusni, there's no such a concern. Obviously, the waters and mikvah mixing together, and if it's going to be tar. So you see that the machlekes Rava but Rabbi Ila is a machlekes Tanai. Now the Gemara asks a question on everyone. Ihachi, if the reason is because of a chatzitza, or because of the mikvah water is not mixing together with the inside of the water bottle. Either way, trumanami. Why are we saying this is a chayim of a kodesh mivit truma? This is the first of 10, 11 stringency that kachim has over truma. Why are you not concerned with truma too of chatzitza and of the mixing of the mikvah waters? So it says the Gemara, and this is a little bit complicated. This is like whole Gemara going to Amud Beis, but Lamad Kamina. Who are we telling this ruling that we're saying? We're giving out Hayra, Psak, Halacha, the Olam Zalvisin, you're not allowed to table a Kli in the Kli. Who are we telling this to? We're telling it to Chaverim, to Tamid Chachamim, to those who are scrupulous. Because the Nama Aretz, he's not coming to ask us this. So therefore, for Truma, we have no concern. Why? Because Chaverim made the Yadiyah. Tamid Chachamim, they know how much the measurement has to be for the waters to mix with the mikvah. And they know regarding the heaviness of a vessel. You see people in the Kelim mikvah all the time. They're there for like 5 minutes making sure, did the fork go up from the basket? Did it not? Like, they know this. So they lift it up. So we don't have to be concerned for Truma to make sure for this halacha of Kli B'Tekli. So the Gemara says, I don't understand. If that's the case, they Kodesh Nami. So what's the difference in Kachim? As Rashi explains. So obviously the Mishnah that says, but not for Kachim is not going to work. We're also talking about the top Achaver there also, because again, if it's Amma Aretz, you think he's going to listen to you? You think he's going to come and ask you the reasoning for this? He's not interested. Obviously it's for Achaver. So then what's the difference for Kachim? You told me Truma, the guy knows the halacha and he's going to be careful. So why Kachim are we mafna? Says the Gemara, no. Chazil Amma Aretz. The reason why we Kachim we have to be machmer, we don't let you do Kli B'Tekli because you buy the Kelim mikvah, and you have an Aretz waiting behind you, and he sees you doing a Kli B'Tekli, Vazel Matful. And he's going to do the same thing, he's going to type it like that too, and he's not going to be so careful, and he's going to have the problem about it's not going to be, his water bottle is not such a wide, he doesn't realize that his water bottle is, and he puts his needles inside, that's not going to work. So the Gemara says, okay, then the other way too. Then Truma Nami Chazal Aretz. The same thing is if let's say he doesn't even know what's Kachim or Truma, but you're tabling your Truma bottle, the Chaver. And the Am Aretz who's is Yisrael also sees what you're doing, Vazel Matfil. And he's going to table also and use it for Truma, and then subsequently give it to the Kayan. So that's also a problem. So why are you only concerned when he's watching you when you're doing for Kachim and not for Truma? Says the Gemara, I don't care what he's doing with his Truma. Because Levi Kablinan, we don't receive Truma Minayu from them, from the Am Aretz. The only time we're going to take Truma from Am Aretz is at the time of the olive press and the wine press. Because then, all the people, they purify their vessels based on the sages, meaning that a chaver is Vitar his kalim. Because as the Mishnah teaches us later on in the Chavdal Mabeis, that once the time of the olive press and the wine press is over, and he brings a barrel of Truma to the kain, we actually don't receive it. So Rashi says, and Taisus quotes us from Rashi, that by this, during the wine press is an exception. And Taisus says it's because, as we'll see later on Chavav, because on a Yom Tov, all Yidden are considered Chaverim. But be that as it may, that's the exception to the rule. But generally, we don't accept Truma from them. So go ahead, let him make a mistake in his Truma. We don't take Truma from him anyway. So it says, okay, so then Kachim also shouldn't accept from him because he obviously doesn't know what he's doing. So how can we accept Kachim from him? So again, like, what's the difference? Says no, Kachim we have to accept from him. It's going to cause enmity. It's going to cause hatred because he's coming with his cup and saying, no, we don't take people of your kind. We don't take from you. It's going to cause hatred. So the Gemara says, Aster, go back. So what's that to Truma? Truma is also going to cause hatred. You're telling me that you don't have to be concerned when he's watching you with your Truma stuff because he didn't do the same thing for his Truma. But and you're saying so, but you're not concerned you're going to take from him because we don't take from him anyway. But then why is that going to cause Eva? Says Gemara, no, it doesn't bother Am Aretz that you don't take his truma from him because also you have little kain Am Aretz chavre. Don't worry, there's another kain also a buck Am Aretz is also there in the outside schmoozing whatever. Says, hey, come here, take my truma because these guys, they're holier than me. They don't want to take my stuff, and you take it. Kachim, there's nothing to do. That's in the base of Mikdash. But Truma, you could find Am Aretz Kayin, so it's not going to cause Eva because he'll give it to someone else who's also Am Aretz. So therefore, that's the difference between the Kachim and the Truma. We're going to Kachim have to be concerned because he's going to follow you for his Kachim the same way, and that's going to be a problem because he's not going to know the exact halachas, and it's going to be chatzitza, or it's not going to be a aid of the mayim of the mikvah, and it's going to be tamei. So you have to make sure that we don't do anything that he might learn wrong. But by Truma, Lazatin, meaning we the Chavim, we know what we're doing. And the Am Aretz is going to see we're doing it. Who cares? We don't take Truma from him anyway. And it's not going to cause Eva because it gives it to Am Aretz, his friend. What?
Wie machst du das? Keine Mudas.
Right, but he's also, the Amoritz is also the same thing. Yeah, but I'm saying, I think he will probably do the same thing also, the Kohen Amoritz. He's not going to listen to you anyway. He's also Tameh. He's also going to, not careful for these halachas. So the Gemara says, but now who is the Tana that we're talking about, that the halachic difference between Kachim and Truma is because of, we're concerned for the hatred, that by Kachim we have to be careful for that because we have to take from him because of Eva. So it's Gemara Rabbi Yisi, because like in the Brayso, Rabbi Yisi says, why is everyone believed, even Amaretz, regarding the purity of wine, of his wine and his oil all year round, that we take from him wine for the Nesachim, and we take Shemen for the Menachos, as the Mishnah teaches later on the Chodal Mabeis. It's actually one of the stringencies that Truma has over Kachim, that in Yehuda, the regular Amaretz believe regarding the purity of his wine and his oil for Kachim, but not for Truma actually. So why are they believed? So the reason is we don't want everyone building his own private altar when pamas are forbidden, and he's going to want to burn a carbon for Shemayim. So the paradum alatzma is going to make his own paradum. He's going to say, I'm enough with these people. I'm breaking off, and we don't need this because they don't take from me anyway. So we have to be concerned for this Eva because everyone just might open up their own groups. Which Shimon Rav Papa says, according to whom is it that the current custom is that we accept testimony from Ibn Amaretz? Come on, says the Gemara, who's it like? It's Kirbyisi, because according to Rabbanah, actually, as the Gemara says in Pesachim, that from Tessim Beis, we don't accept testimony from the Amaretz, we don't trust them. Who is it going like that we do trust them? It's Kirbyisi because Rosh would cause Eva. That's what Taisa says that today, when we make a Zimun, we make Zimun with Amaretz, even though the Gemara Bracha says that Tamachachim should not have a Zimun with Amaretz. So it says, anyways, we're not mafsik ourselves like Tamid Chacham regarding this, and we take an Amaretz like other people, again, because we're concerned about Eva, because of the hatred that it might cause. But now the Gemara goes back and says, okay, you're telling me that for Kachim, the reason why we have Kli B'Tei Kli is because we're concerned that not for the Chaver, it's because Amaretz who might see, and he might do the same, and he might stumble, and we do take Kachim from him, whereas Truma, no, we know the halacha, we're concerned about Shaferes Hanoy, not concerned. We know what we're doing. But the Amaretz, you're going to see, who cares? We don't take from him anyway. He gives he's not going to cause Eva because he's given to the Kohen Amaretz. But the Gemara says, V'nechesh l'she'ela. The Gemara says, no, we should not allow toiveling a Kli with a Kli for Truma. Why? Because like we said, maybe Amaretz is going to see, he's going to do the same, and he doesn't know what he's doing. He doesn't realize his bottle is not the same bottle as the Chaver had a 2-liter bottle with fat 3-liter, 3-liter bottles. Remember in camp he had this like from ShopRite, right? The 3-liter bottle had huge opening because it's cheaper that way. Tamil Chacham is titling his bottle, and the Amaretz doesn't really. There's the 1-liter bottle. It doesn't have it. It's annoying. So we said, what's the problem? Who cares? So who cares? It's not. We're not taking from Truma anyway. No, the problem is because we borrow their kelim and we use their kelim. So we should be concerned about what we borrow from them in regards to the Truma, which could become Tameh, which is not purified in the mikvah because they're not doing it right. It's not like when the Mishnah said these idiots that we borrow from them. The Mishnah said, although we're not taking Truma from them, but we borrow their vessels. And this might be a vessel that has we're going to use it for Truma, and it's going to be a Tameh Kli. As the Mishnah teaches, Kli Cheres, Matzal ala Kol. An earthenware vessel saves everything. Now, what is this referring to? Either one of two cases. Either it's referring to an earthenware vessel that's surrounded with what's called a tzamid puzzle, a tightly fastened seal in an oil where there's a dead person. The earthenware vessel will protect what's inside because the earthenware vessel is not like tumah from the outside, only from the inside. It has a tightly fastened seal, so there's no way for tumah to get in. It protects whatever's inside. Or another case is let's say there's a mess on the first floor. Let's say you're in a hospital, and there's a mess on the first floor. And there's things that are tahar in the second story. Now the thing is there's a skylight that's open from the first floor to the second floor. But what they did is they put an earthenware vessel by the opening, and now it's blocking the tumah from going up through the skylight to the second story. So a kli cheres is chaitzit, it's interposed in front of tumah from coming up because it cannot be makabel tumah from its outside. So therefore it's going to protect whatever's on the second story. Another vessel has become tummy itself, so it's not going to be chaitzis. A klicheres is going to be chaitzis because it's not makabel tumah from its outside. So therefore it protects everything divrei beisil. Again, whichever case we're talking about, let's say it's that of the second story. The Shamir, they say no. It's a little complicated this case, but Bishami says no, the earthenware vessel is only going to save for the earthenware vessel, food items and beverages. It's not going to save for everything else from Mukamitam. So I'm like Basil Bishami. Basil says to Bishami, Nema, why? Why are you differentiating when it's going to be saved as to remain tar? So I'm Bishami says, I'll tell you the reason. Nishahu Tame, because this vessel was originally tummy before the Amoritz put it by the skyline. Because Al Gabi Amoritz, the Amoritz himself is always tummy. We always consider him as tummy. So this klichas that he put there beforehand was already tummy. Ve'en kli tummy chaitzitz, a kli that itself is tummy cannot be a barrier from tummy getting from one place to another place. It's only because generally klicheres, that's tar, is not going to be receiving the tumah from its outside, from its exterior. Therefore, it's a barrier. But if it's already tumah, it can't be a barrier from tumah going on because it itself is a conduit for tumah because it itself is going to be tumah. So therefore, Bishami says Tama Aritz's klicheres is not going to work as a barrier. So Basil says, what do you mean? But you made this like quasi tahara over here. You said that if it's, let's say, with a tightly fastened seal, na'olam mace, that it's gonna protect the food and the beverages that are inside the vessel. Now, how does it work for that? If it's tamei, then it's tamei. Then it shouldn't protect on anything. Why are you saying for everything else it's not going to remain tar, but for those things it's going to remain tar? Shami said the Bissa like this. When we said that the food items and beverages inside are going to remain tar, you know who we said that for as we continue them in base? We said it for him that we purified it, meaning we let the Amoritz eat it. Because anyways, Chaverim, they stay away from Amoratzim and what they touch. And anyway, they treat his food as Tameh. So, they're not eating it anyway. Avo, the Taras Akli, but says Bishami, you think we're going to say halachically that all the other kalim in that second story is going to be tar? Where if we purified it, that would be for you and for him. Because you might borrow the kli from him, and you're going to use it. So therefore says Bishami, no, for that we're not going to say tar, because really nothing is tar. It's all tummy. We told him the food and the drink because, well, what are we going to do anyway? He's not listening to us anyway, and we let him eat it. But it's not going to cause a michshel because Chavim are not eating his food anyway. Like we said, we don't take from them their food. We don't take truma from them. But the vessels we borrow from them. You call up the neighbor, hey Shirley, could I have that mixer? You're going to be borrowing the kalim. No, for that we have to make it tameh because it's not protecting the kalim in the second story because his klicheres is not a chatzitza because it can't be a barrier because it's tameh because the Amoritz made it tameh. So what we see from this is obviously there is a concern for borrowing vessels. So this is all building the question that we had. Says why are we not concerned for the borrowing the vessels? Why are we letting you do kli by truma? Because we don't take truma anyway. Okay, but kalim we do. So why are we not concerned for the kalim shabbai? And simply we learn in Raisa Tanya, I'm going to be sure. He says, he says, the school of Shammai, I'm embarrassed from your words. Because how can you say such an interesting opinion? Is it possible you have a woman that's kneading dough in a trough, meaning in a large bowl, in the second story? Now, you're telling me the woman and the bowl are tamei for 7 days because there's tumas mess from the first floor, which you tell me that the klicheres of the Amoritz is not chaytzitz. So whatever's on the second story is going to be tamei, as if the tum of the mess went through that skylight that there is over there going into the second story. Uvatzig tar, but the dough is tar, because you tell me the oicha mashkin, you told me Beishami remain tar. So I mean, come on, does that make sense? Like she is kneading the dough, and the bowl, both her and the bowl are tamei for 7 days because of tumas mess, but the dough is tar. And similarly, lugin moli mashkin, you have a bottle full with liquid, or like a beverage. So lugin tamei shivas. So you tell me the bottle is tamei for 7 days. Mashkin tar and the beverage is tar. So one of the students of the school of Shammai, he got in the discussion with him. Somebody said to him, should I tell you the reasoning of Beis why they said this halacha? Somebody says, yeah, please say it. Somebody says, I'll tell you like this. He answers, definitely a good answer is always starts with a question. He says, Kli Tame. A vessel that's Tame. Is that a barrier or not? I'm like, no, says he sure. No, of course we know Kli Tame is not a barrier. And then he says another question. He says, Kli Shalama Aretz. A vessel Lama Aretz. Tame or Tar? Do we treat it as Tame Tar? I'm like, Tame, Lama Aretz. We treat him like a Zav or whatever. Whatever he touches, Tame. Okay. Says the student, if you're going to tell him something is Tame, is he going to pay attention to you? Not only that. If you tell him something is Tame, you know what he's going to tell you? Shali tar v'shalcha Tame. Mine is tar and yours is Tame. Go to a guy, tell him not to talk in church. Say, you go where you need to go. I will do. You're the Rasha. I'm the tzaddik, right? So he says, if you tell him something is Tame, he's going to say, mine is tar and yours is Tame. So he's not listening to you. So he says, that's the reason Beis Shammai. Like Rashi explains. The reason why Beis Shammai said that it's kli cheres and the food and the beverage is going to remain tar, because there's no way of purifying food items. You got to throw it in the garbage. And the kli cheres, the only way you can purify it is by breaking it. So if you're going to tell him that it's asur, he's going to say, go fly a kite. He's not listening to you. Now, the way Rashi says differently. He said, but let's say a kli shetef, a vessel that you could table. Okay, he'll listen to you, but I'll table it. Not a big deal. His wife's going anyways to the store. He says, okay, these rabbis, timat taiva, go take it anyway, whatever. But for his food, his steak that he made for that night's dinner, you can tell him, it's tummy. He's not listening to you. Kli cheres says you're gonna have to break all his pottery. He's not listening to you. I had this from my grandmother. I'm not breaking this. So that's the reasoning Beis Shammai why they said, because as we said before, Beis Shammai only did it for the Amoritz himself, because Amoritz is not listening to anyway. And the Chaver's not taking these stuff in Amoritz. But stuff that the Amoritz will give to the Chaver, because he's going to borrow it, of course we have to be concerned. We tell him you got a table, you can't, because of course your kli cheres is not a chetz, it's not a barrier. Now, Miyad Halav Rabbi Shua heard the pshat, and this happens oftentimes when we don't know something, we talk maybe a little bit too strong, we say, it can't be, Suddenly he says, okay. Maybe next time don't talk so fast. I'm not saying about Rabbi Shua, but Rabbi Shua went in the Shtatef, like Rabbi Shammai, he prostrated himself, he bowed down on the graves of the school of Shammai. Could be they were in the chelka of the school of Shammai. And Amai says, Beis says, I've spoken too much against you, the bones of the school of Shammai, because the master, if your very cryptic teachings are like this, that, wow, it's so right. So Mefarash Salachas can become the ones that you're explicit about, which are understood, all the more so how much we have to respect your teachers. And Amr, they said, Kol Yomav, all the days of Yeshua, Hushchudoshinav, his teeth were black, because of all the fast that he had, because that he had spoken too strongly against something opinion Beis Shammai, which he ended up hearing and understanding what the pshat was. Okay, but Ktani Mias, this was all to conclude the question we started from Amud Aleph. We see that the school of Shammai said to Hill, says, wait a second, there's a difference between the kelim that I'm going to say in the second story is going to be tar, and between the food and the beverages, because the food and beverages, Talmud Chacham is not taking it anyway, so I just said it's tar for him, let him have his food, he's not listening anyway. But when I said it's kelim as a tar, it's because that you, the Talmud Chacham, you're also going to use the kelim from him. And we have to be careful about that. I'm a shalim minai. So see, we do borrow from them. So that takes us back to the question. You told me the Chayme B'Kodesh Mibetruma is regarding Kalim Tev Kalim that Chava, we said he knows halachas chatzitza, he knows the halach of Shefes Hanayim. For him, we're not concerned. Concern is that Amoritz is watching him with his kachim. He's like, what's he doing? Okay, he does the same, and he doesn't know, and we're gonna take kachim from him, and we have to because it's going to be Ava. So we have to make sure we do it in a way that he's not going to mess up. But Truma, we're not concerned about. Why not? Because we don't take Truma from him anyway. And there's no Ava because he's going to give it to his friend that's on Amoritz. Yeah, but what's with the Keli itself? We're going to take the Kalim from him. And that's going to cause Tumah for the Truma. So how do we borrow Kalim, which we do, if he's watching us do our Truma and he's going to do the same thing? Which is going to run into a problem. Maybe it's going to be Tumah. Says the Gemara, it's not a problem. You're right, we borrow from them. But Kashalim and I, when we borrow from them, we tell them. Because maybe when he saw us do our Kli B'Techli, which we do for our Truma, because we don't have the chumrah. He did it wrong. I'm like, okay, the Sama that's and I'm going to borrow from him a keli. I'm going to table it because he probably didn't do a good tefillah anyway. So it's no problem. Yeah, you borrow it, but you'll table it. Says, if that's the case, that when we borrow the kelim, we table it, so now how do you Beis Hillel? So why didn't Beis Hillel respond to Beis Shammai at the end of the discussion of what we quoted here on the top of this Amid from the previous Amid? Kisha Alina Minayu. Beis Shammai said to Beis Hillel, says, you want to know why I'm saying his food and his drink is tar, but the vessels are tamei? He says, yeah, but the vessels is l'chol. You're going to be using it also. I have to tell him it's tamei. So that make sure he knows, and he's going to send his wife to go send it to the mikveh. He's not going because I don't believe in these things. But okay, you want to go, fine. Say table it. But why didn't Beis Hillel respond to Beis Shammai? He says, what do you mean? Why are you telling me that you have to tell him his vessels are tamei? So that he tables it because we borrow from them. Who cares? That when we borrow from them, but really we table ourselves anyway. Why do I need you to tell him that that's tamei? Your food, you're letting him tar. Go eat your tamei digga food. And with kelim, no, you have to tell him it's tamei because then he'll be concerned and I'll table it because we need him to table because we borrow from him. What do you mean? But you told me when you borrow from him, you table it anyway. So why do I need to tell him that it's tamei? Says the Gemara, no, tamei meis boy hazor gimel v'zayin. If we're talking about that there was on the first story a dead person and the second floor were these kelim, so that's a tumah from a dead person. That boy hazor gimel v'zayin, that needs to be sprayed with the ash water of the paraduma on day 3 and day 7 of a purification period. Umana lazayin yomi le'mushli inshi. A vessel is not usually borrowed for 7 days. That's what we were saying in such a cases where Beis Shammai was telling Beis Hillel that we are mitami his vessels, so that we make sure that he purifies it, which is not going to be just enough for the trip to the mikveh. He's going to have to have it sprayed day 3 and day 7, because although we totally come that we borrow from Amaretz, but we don't usually borrow for a period of 7 days. So it's not going to help that we table it, because it needs spraying day 3 and day 7. So that's what Beis Shammai said to Beis Hillel, that you have to go ahead and tell him that it's tamei, so that he purifies it with the paraduma waters on day 3 and day 7. Whereas the question we asked in Amid Aleph regarding in regular that he didn't do good tefillah, for that don't worry, we table anyway. That's not a problem. So that resolves the questions that said, Beis Hillel couldn't respond to Beis Shammai because they were talking about Tumas Mes. Tumas Mes, we're not going to hold on to him a week to spray day 3, day 7, so that we have to tell him that he's mitaret. But regarding in general, regarding that we maybe take kli that we're going to borrow from them kelim. Okay, you do it tefillah and you wait for Erev Shemesh and then you'll use it. But now the Gemara asks on the premise that we said, tefillah mehemni. Is that really true that we don't believe regarding tefillah that you're saying that if you borrow a kli from an Amaretz, you have to table it, so there's no problem about his messing up truma kli b'tei kli because you're going to table it anyway? Well, we don't believe him when he says that he tabled it. But we're talking about in the Brisa, Amaretz is believed al taharas tefillas tamei meis regarding the purification of tabling from something that was coming from a dead person. So you see, you do believe him that he tabled. So why are you saying that you have to table every time you borrow a kli from the arts? So my Rabbi says, like, it's not difficult. Because haba gufay, when do we say we believe him that he tabled? It's his own body, his own self. Because that's very stringent to a person when he himself becomes tummy. Haba kelov, but regarding his vessels, he's not so machmer, and we don't believe him that he tabled, and that's why you have to table it. Or another approach, Rav Amma, he says, no, both could be talking about his vessels. Like, it's not difficult. When did we say we believe him? Is the if he says, I didn't table a kli in the kli. So we don't have a reyes in the first place. So he didn't do a kli in the kli. Okay, so then he probably did a valid tefillah. But when did we say we don't believe him? Is he says I did a kli b'tei kli, but he says, I didn't do it in a vessel that didn't have a wide enough hole, which basically says I did it in a vessel that had a wide enough hole. Then we don't believe him. We don't trust him because he did it kli and maybe it was too small. Because Tanya, as we learned in the Brisa, there's not a question, there's Mechusa, that Neman Amaretz Leimer, Amaretz is believed to say, Peiris lehukshu. These pairs were never in contact with one of the 7 liquids that makes it susceptible to tumah. But Abul Einan is not believed to say Peiris hukshu to Abul Einan. No, he's not believed to say that they were susceptible to tumah, but they did not become tumah. Once there's a reyesa, once there's a flaw, we don't trust him. If it's black and white, we trust him. Once it's gray, we don't trust him. So that's the same thing we're saying, where, we believe him regarding Tvila if he says, I did a regular Tvila. But the moment he says it was a Kli B'Tat Kli, but he says, but this, but that, no. We don't believe it. And therefore, that's the second teretz the Gemara gave, that although one place says we believe, one says not, one is talking about where he says he did it in one, but he didn't do it in a Kli, and the other one says where he did it testically. Now the Gemara, however, asks on one of the premises we mentioned before. The first answer was Machalik and said that when did we say we believe in his for his own body? When did we not believe him was when it's regarding his kelim. Says Gemara, is he really believe regarding his own body? But the time in the price, Chaver Shabola Hazes. Tamachachim is coming to be sprayed with the ash water of the Paraduma. Where he says, I'm ready for my first spray. Now what that means to say is that let's say he became Tomah from a dead person, he already had 3 days pass, and it's day 3. And now he could get his first spraying, and he'll come back 4 days later for a second spring on day 7. So Mazal Miyah, we spray him right away because, we just sprayed up to day 3. But Amaretz comes and says, ich bin bereit to be sprayed. He said, we don't just spray him. We see you registered, you punched in, we see you here, okay. Now we want to wait 3 days, and then we'll give you your first spray, and then 4 days, then we'll give you the second. So you see, we don't believe him regarding his tahara. He's obviously saying that I'm ready already. I'm ready 3 days. You see, do you believe him regarding his tahara of his body or not? So Elam Abaye says not difficult. There's different interpretations, Tais and Rashi, but the way Rashi says is, since you're stringent on him when he's coming in the beginning of his purification, which is the first thing is when he's coming to be sprayed, so you're stringent on him. You don't believe him, like we're bringing from this halacha. We don't believe you up to day 3. We're going to make sure we see 3 days in front of you. So he kaltalav b'sayfai. So therefore we're lenient on the end that we believe him that when he taibel, which is after the 7 days, that we know that he's going to be careful with his tefillah because I'm not doing this all over again because they don't trust me. If this didn't work out, I'm going to have to go back and start over. So therefore, that's why we make up. We do believe him regarding his tefillah because since we're stringent regarding the zrika, the hazah, so we are makel on him b'sayfai regarding the tefillah. So it is like the premise we said before that he is believed regarding his own guf. Now going back to the halacha of the Mishnah, which we were saying chumras of truma over kachim. One of them was acharayim b'teich, that we said that there's a leniency of truma over kachim. That when you have a vessel has many different parts. There's the back of the vessel, there's the inside of the vessel, there's the handle of the vessel. There's many different parts. So for truma we consider them as distinct, which is because it's a rabbinic tumah. Obviously, if it's biblical, the whole thing would become tummy. But regarding kachim, no, we treat it all as one. Says the Gemara, what's this halacha talking regarding the back and the inside? It's kind of like we learned the Mishnah Masechtas Kelim. Mishnah says, if you have a vessel, that the back side of the vessel, the outside, the exterior became tummy, which we're talking about a wooden vessel or a metal vessel, which the outside could become tummy, because obviously klicheres cannot become tummy on the outside, but a vessel that the outside could become tummy. And how to become tummy is b'mashkin, with a beverage. Why beverage? Because as Rashi explains, that's a rabbinic tumah. Because biblically, food items and beverages cannot be metamei kli. Because a kli cannot be mekabel tumah only from an avatum, and a food item is not an avatum. But the chamor geyser, then mashkin should be metamei kli. Why would we do that? Because there are certain mashkin that are avatumas that could be metamei kli minatayr. What mashkin? I thought mashkin are not. It's specifically a liquid like the spittle of a zab or his urine. Because his fountains, as it's called, has the same status as himself, which is avatam. So therefore we said every mashkin we have to be concerned about, we don't know, is it apple juice, is it urine, we won't know. And it's metamei kli, so we can say all liquids are metamei kli. Now since this tumah is from rabbinic law, so the halacha is, achoidev tmei. We'll say that, okay, so this kli that became tumah from the exterior, only the exterior is going to be tumah, but all its other utilities are going to remain tar. And the Rabbana specifically did that. It's not like they were just being makel in rabbinic law. They wanted it to be a differentiation, so that you should know that this tumah is rabbinic, and that why would we want to know it's rabbinic? Because if let's say Truma Kachim touched this kli tameh, So you have to burn truma and kachim that became tummy. But that's only if it's biblically tummy, rabbinically tummy. That doesn't allow you to violate the isra of burning truma and kachim, which you're not allowed to. So it's only rabbinically tummy that doesn't give you a biblical exemption to burn it. So therefore, that's how the Gemara says in the first paragraph and Nida that we only said so only the exterior is going to be tummy. But toiche, the inside of the vessel, ugnoi, its lip, which is the edge that's bent out towards the outside, which you could use also, and oznai is the ear, for example, the ear of the barrel, meaning it's a type of like a handle. Or v'yadav, it's a different type of a handle, like let's say a vessel that has a long handle, like a pan. All those other parts are taharin. Those are all considered distinct entities. But if the inside becomes tummy, then even if it's rabbinic tumah, kuli tumah is all going to become tummy. But one thing we see is that this is something that's a stringent kachim over the truma, but regarding truma, we're going to consider it as separate. Regarding kachim, we're going to consider it all as one, even regarding this rabbinic tumah. Now, the Mishnah mentioned that another one of the parts of the vessel of the acharayim b'toich is a beisat tzvita v'chulu. That's also considered a separate part. So the Gemara says, my beisat tzvita, the Gemara just wants to define and translate what's the beisat tzvita. So Rabbi Yehuda Mishmuli says it's makom shetzayv toy. What does it mean shetzayv toy? So Rashi says is where you grab a hold of it and you stretch it out to others. Because it says a pasuk in Rus, the yitzvat lo kali, that he stretched out the har, which as the targum there it says va'ishet lo kali, the roasted grain. So you see that beisat tzvita is like a handle where you stretch it out to others. Or a different interpretation of Asim Rabbi Yechon, it says mokum shenekia das. It's the place of the vessel where it's like the consciously clean, but that's not really what it means. It's like an istinus, a very delicate person. That's where they are saving. Which from Rashi sounds like the word saving means that's where they dip their food into like mustard or vinegar, where what they would do is they would carve out on the bottom of the bowl like a separate receptacle, and it's higher all around, and they would put inside over there vinegar or mustard, meaning like when you get these nice, Uber Eats and you have this little container inside where it's like a container and it's like you have where you could dip in over there. That's the base hatzvita, which again, it has its own function, even though it's part of the vessel. So again, we're just saying that either it's a handle or it's a place where you dip into with a very delicate istiness, the chatzsham, that the coleslaw should touch the chalent a little bit, because now it's already puzzle. It's like you have to throw it out because it's these istiness, everything has to be separate containers, and because it can't touch. So that's what the base of tzvita is. Now the Gemara qualifies. Tani Rav Bibi Kametu Rav Nachman. He taught the following brayser of Bibi in front of Rav Nachman. He said, "Kol hakelim, all the vessels, ein lehem acharayim b'toich." Meaning, there's no difference between the outside or the inside of the vessel. Rather, if one part becomes tummy, all of it is tummy. And that's echad kachim mikdash, whether kachim from the base of mikdash, or echad kachim gvul, whether we're talking about kachim that are out of the base of mikdash. So Amalei, so Nachman Ashman says, wait a second. With this brayso, I don't really understand. Kachim gvul ma'ininu. What are kachim that are in the out of the base of mikdash? That's truma, which is eaten in the whole gvul, the whole boundary of Eretz Yisrael. That's why I call it kachim gvul. It's like the boundary of Eretz Yisrael. How can you say that if one part becomes tummy, all becomes tummy? But we learned in our Mishnah, which we just discussed, the exterior, the interior, the base of tzvita, l'truma for truma, each one is considered independent. So how can you tell me that if one part becomes tummy, it all becomes tummy? Dilma, maybe when you're saying kachik gvul, what you meant to say is not really truma. Maybe you meant l'chulin shenasal taras hakodesh kamer. Maybe you meant it's really chulin, so it's really gvul. It's not really of the base of mikdash, but it's being done on the level of purity of kachim. Because like we said, certain families, they were always eating kachim. They had the temche Shabbos of the base of mikdash, and then would drop off leftover chatzas, leftover whatever. Not really that, but shlamim, whatever, and taidas, and so they ate all their chulin on taras hakodesh. So maybe that's what you meant kachei hagvul. Once you said this, Adkarta Nilsa the Amar Rabbi Baravua. I recall something that Rabbi Baravua, who is Rav Nachman's Rebbe, he was saying over teaching from his Rebbe that recalled him from how he's explaining this. Our Mishnah of Chumrah B'Kodesh was talking about 11 levels that is a Chumrah of Kachim over Truma. Sheish Rishonos, the first 6 are Bein L'Kodesh, Bein L'Chulin Shenaso Taras HaKodesh. It's not just for kachim, it's also for the chulin made on taras hakodesh, and this is from the first 6 stringencies. Acharaynis, the last 5, well, the kodesh only for kachim, not for chulna made al tarsa kodesh. So therefore, that's what you meant to say. When you were quoting this brayser, Habibi, that said all the vessels, we don't differentiate acharayim v'toich, we're going to consider all as one vessel, whether it's kachei hamikdash or kachei gvul. Kachei gvul obviously cannot mean truma, because truma does not have that chumrah. That's what our Mishnah said. That's a chumrah of kachim over truma. You meant what kachei gvul, the brayser, that it means to say chulin shenasal tarsa kodesh, which are obviously kachim of gvul that you have adna base of mikdash because you treat it to the level of kachim. Yeah, that's the first from the first 6, which has the same chumrah as kachim itself, and therefore it's not going to be making a chilik between acharayim and toich or beis hatzvit. It's going to have the same halacha if you touch one part. All of it's going to become tummy. Anytime.